Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see all of your wonderful faces today. Hi. So, I think everyone that's in the waiting room is on at the moment. So we will start there. And as people come in, we will let them in as they go. I did want to kind of make a clarification because it seems like there was a little bit of a misunderstanding in what the purpose of these community meetings are and why they're recorded. This is our 4th community meeting. And as you know, this Zoom is being recorded, and following the last meeting, there was concern. So we, at the beginning of the year, in looking at how we're moving forward, wanted to be very clear and transparent in everything that we were doing. So having open meetings in terms of board meetings and such. Also just wanting to encourage more community involvement. So that's why we started these community meetings. And part of that is to start community conversations about, where we're at, what we're doing, what WSLO is doing, but as a community, just as a place that come together. So the purpose of the recording of these is to share with community, because not everyone can log in exactly, at 6 o'clock, people are working, whatever. But there's things that the community doesn't want to miss. So when we started these community meetings in February, we started a YouTube page because we found that sharing to Facebook is not as easy when you have an hour-long or 2-hour meeting. It just doesn't have the capacity for that. So we started a YouTube channel, which hope you all share and follow. But you can go back and listen to the meeting we had in February on what it means to be on a board, which is a good prequel to this meeting here. But that is the intention, is that community accountability. So, and being available to that conversation. Is there questions about that? Yes, Jim?
Yeah, just want to confirm that what you're saying there is anyone in this meeting who's being recorded is giving consent to have their voice and video be posted to YouTube.
So what we found is it's hard to edit these Zooms because they don't cut off exactly correctly, which is why we did just the voice recordings in the last, and it does keep some anonymity and privacy when you are not, your face is not there necessarily as well. And if you're, so the intention is, yes, it will be shared, but because of the way Zoom cuts in and out, it is likely, unless it is a panel where, you have pinned people and those pinned people are talking and those pinned people have been part of the conversation, it's hard to do the video. So the video is likely not going to be part of those posts when it's just a meeting. So it would just be your voice. And like we've in meetings previously, people have chosen to put questions in the on the notepad, and everybody can read them, and we can read them toward the end and whenever it's appropriate, and answer those questions from the chat as well. Okay, questions, concerns? No? Good. Perfection. So the follow-up, got a few people let in this room. 1 second here. No. Okay, perfection. So part of this, the purpose of this meeting is the next step, right? We talked kind of last meeting about where we've been, where we are currently, and where we're going. So the idea was to really talk about where we're going, what does the board need, and where we are in moving forward, right? So one of the things I wanted to start with, because it was a conversation piece last meeting, was what is WSLO? Because I have had questions on who does WSLO represent, who's allowed to join, all of those things. What's the purpose? So I pulled out our bylaws and our basic incorporation. And so I wanted to make sure to read this kind of clearly for everyone, so you know where we are starting from. So this corporation shall be organized and operated exclusively for social welfare, civic, and charitable purposes. Subject to limitations stated in articles of incorporation, the purpose of this corporation shall be to engage in any lawful activities, none of which are for profit, and for this corporation was organized in the state of Washington. Okay, the corporation's primary purpose shall be to raise needed funds for other nonprofit organizations through various events and to provide educational forum on a variety of related health and social issues that impact the gay and lesbian community in compliance with the 501c3 status. Does that make sense? That's what we're here for. Education, raising funds. Yeah, good, cool. So as a board, we want to make sure that we are striving to provide safe environments for all members of our community. Therefore, we have made this statement back in 2019, when things were kind of going in different directions around community as a whole. And so therefore, the Board of Washington State Leather Organization want to be known that we, Washington State Leather Organization, strive to provide safe environments for all members of our community. Therefore, it does not condone, support, or allow any of the following behaviors by our board, title holders, or within our events: racism, sexism, misogyny, ageism, ableism, transphobia, homophobia, consent violations, non-consensual predatory behavior, physical, mental, or emotional abuse or harassment or abuse of power. Lot of things. But I'm two sucks. So any questions about either of those statements? Nope. Cool. I do have the chat open, so if you do have a question and you want me to read the question, I'm happy to do that. Finn, go ahead with your question. And raise your hand if you have a question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was given the thumbs up, like,
okay,
on one page.
That works too. Wonderful. Okay, so going forward, there, as far as the organization goes, the expectations of the board is all part of this, what our discussion is. These, I found the most recent copy of the bylaws, which we've discussed in the past, need to be updated because they were written in 1998. So a little while ago, just a tad bit. So these bylaws have not been updated since then. So until they are updated, we are still required to follow them, right? Because until something changes, this is where we're at. So there are regular meetings, special meetings, notice of meetings, etc., that could be called for depending on what's going on. So in terms of if you were to want to join the board, there are regular meetings, and there is a 20-day notice for when the next meeting is going to be for mandatory kind of attendance. But part of so part of that is that there is also specified that the board shall have up to 12 directors on the board of directors. So that is what we are working towards. As far as we have vacancies, and it's the way it currently is stated, that the bylaws is that a person can be elected to fill a vacancy, or can, by the current board of directors, appointed to a position within the board. So we have vacancies. One of the biggest things that we have tried to do, which was a question of the whether or not we are putting out an actual application. And one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that we are reaching people that we don't know, because this board, for instance, in the past, is been set of people that were known within Seattle, and they knew their group of people and they brought their people into positions, and then other people, kind of just a word of mouth situation. And we want to make sure that we're including a cross section of the community, but we know we don't know everybody. It's just not, and we don't know everyone on Eastern Washington, Bellingham, like across the state. So that's the reason for that new application, is for people to be able to put their requests to be of interest, right? And then we can talk to them about what that environment, what that looks like for them, what their commitment is, what they want to do, and why. So do we have any questions about like the board setup, makeup, or how that is moving forward?
Yeah, I had a quick question.
Kelly?
Since the organization doesn't have membership and it's just a board, what does the bylaws state about how bylaws are changed? How does that process work per the bylaws?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me slide, because I have them up on my screen. Give me 2 seconds. Very good question. Anybody else have a question while I'm looking? Okay. Ready? I found it. Okay, so amendment to the bylaws, subject to the power of the members, if any of this corporation to adopt, amend, or repeal the bylaws of the corporation, except as may otherwise specified under provision of law. These bylaws may be altered, amended, or repealed, and new laws adopted by the approval of board of directors.
A simple majority of the current board of directors.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Basically, we need to rewrite them, and then we can put them in. Okay. Anything I need? Jason.
Hey, so this is less a question, but I do have some suggestions about maybe a better model for how the board would be structured to help engage more of the community directly in the leadership of WSLO. I don't know if now is the right time for that, or if you'd like to hold off.
Let's introduce how we what we're thinking,
Okay.
and then if you have additional, we can additional at that point. Perfect. So on that lines, we know that a lot of people also don't necessarily have the capacity or in times of time commitment to be on the board. So we have decided to split up some of what was just board decisions and board work into committees. And this will allow like a arrangement of people to participate and also be able to do things that they enjoy versus just the whole board piece. So the committees that we are looking to form are a community outreach, which will help to bring new members into our new organizations to awareness of WSLO, as well as participation and new people. That community outreach committee would also be responsible for our social media and any outward messages as part of that community outreach piece. Then we're also going to have the contest producers in terms of the logistics of the contest, structure, putting in those that can help organize the contest itself. And then our educational and community meetings, so that, you know, the board's not the only one coming up with these ideas of what are we going to talk about this month, or what are we going to discuss. We can have community buy-in, and people may have just topics that are important to them that we may not have thought of. So we want to make sure that there's a committee for that. And then also that you guys don't have to listen to me every time we have one of these meetings. And then also a committee for accessibility, to make sure that any of the things that we are doing, we address what are accessibility concerns. So when we're doing the contest and we're doing planning for that, or we're doing planning for committee meetings or in-person meetings, that we are considering all the accessibility needs. So we have, you know, a segment to go through. And then the fifth and last one would be hold on 2 seconds. Is going to be our fundraising. So to help with our main mission is fundraising for our title holders, fundraising for our contests, fundraising for any other events that we decide that we need funds for, such as we've discussed doing a couple of classes. Well, instructors are, you know, they cost. So if we want to do professional courses on mediation, on just different ideas that we've had, identifying different things and how do we build community guidelines. We want to make sure we have outside resources for that as well if we need it, and we want to make sure that we're paying for those services. So we need fundraising for that. So we would have a board member that would be part of each of the committees, and then we would have some things that were board specific as well. Thoughts, questions? Jason, you want to add anything to that? Either Jason.
I was like, wait a second.
Either one.
So Raven in the chat said, have you considered including member at large type board positions from the existing leather orgs? And that kind of segues into what I wanted to propose, which is something I've spoken to the other Jason about previously. Back in 2005, 2006, I was on the board of the Los Angeles Leather Coalition, which is a similar organization to WSLO in so much as that it produces the Mr. and Ms. Los Angeles Leather Contest. I'm not sure if they've got a mixed contest yet, or a bootblack one. At the time, it was just Mr. and Ms. And the way that they're set up is that they have currently nine board members. 5 of those are what they call voting community partners, and they are a 501, as far as I know, a 501c3, but they're set up with membership where their community partners are businesses and organizations in the community who, after they've gone to 3 consecutive meetings, can apply to become a voting community partner and represent their business or their organization on the board. And those are the voting members of the board, in addition to 4 executive members that are, you know, generally chosen to serve independently of whatever sort of organizational connections that they have. What that has done, and so what necessitated that change was that the way that Los Angeles, that area structured their contests was that they had a bunch of little bar contests going on. And then also the Mr. Contest, and they were sending a bunch of people to the various, to ABW and IML and stuff. They were often having this contest happening the same weekend. So they formed that structure to help the orgs talk to one another about planning the contest schedule initially. I think that was back in like 1998, 1999. But it has evolved from that into now all of those individual contests feed contestants into the Mr. LA Leather contest. So what that does is help prevent one of the problems I've seen with the WSLO contest for the past years that I've lived here. Which is that you often either have no contestants or one contestant or maybe two contestants for a particular title. Whereas if there were more participating titles in the system, smaller, lower stakes contests that I think people might be more willing to enter into, because again, the stakes are lower and the responsibilities are lower. It might be interesting, it might be an interesting way to move forward with that. And if the people who decide to join WSLO decide that that's how they want to go forward. But regardless of the whole contest reason for how LALC is set up that way, what it does is it gets everybody in the room who wants to participate in that organization and in this larger umbrella regional leather organization, and everybody's at the table. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat if anybody is interested in seeing how they're set up to their partnership page. Their partnerships include Christopher Street West, which puts on LA Pride, Sanctuary Studios, which is a dungeon. Our equivalent might be Subspace, or I don't know, Crow's Nest if they wanted to join. Bears LA, so XL Bears might be the equivalent. All of the leather bars, so that would be potentially Cuff, CC's Eagle, any other bar, Diesel if they wanted, who wanted to join. The LA Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence have been a member for a very, very long time. Onyx is a voting member as well. LA Band of Brothers, which is like a group of title holders that form their own 501c in order to have more play parties. And they reach out even as far as Palm Springs and farther afield, in addition to, some the women's groups, etc. So what that does is get everybody on the board and voting around what happens with the organization, and gets the stakeholders into the room every time a decision gets made, right? And you're talking about possibly rewriting your bylaws. We're approaching the end of the year. Sounds like you're wanting to bring on more people. It seems like I would love for the current board of WSLO to talk about, is this a model that would work, and maybe start reaching out to some of their community partners, SLSC, SML, XL Bears, Onyx, CPAW, everybody who's, I think there's representatives from all of those groups on the call right now, plus I'm sure more that I'm not mentioning. So I think that's, one way to help fill the board positions, knock that out, get everybody in the room, knock that out, and get everybody working together and invested in the organization's success, because right now it seems like the mood has been a bit combative, right, for the past couple of years. So that's what I wanted to add. And Raven, that's what I was talking about. If you have more to add, of course, by all means, chime on in. But I think that might be a model moving forward that would solve a few problems.
Sorry, I was talking on mute. As Jason said, we've talked about that before, and it's an organizational model that I like the idea of a lot as well.
Yeah, we have talked about that option. I think that the biggest thing is we need to make sure that organizations are all represented, and so making sure that they want to be like part of it. It's kind of and putting that invitation out and making sure that we have connections to people that can make that happen is a big part of it. And so I appreciate you bringing it up here, because there is representation from a lot of different organizations here. And so hopefully people who kind of like this idea will be able to come together and join, right? Like from that, like if we put a call out for representation from multiple or for any organization that wants to be part of it, then hopefully people will step up to that.
Yeah, and I just want to add not just organizations, but also the businesses.
Yes.
The bars, like any of them, and pull at CSPC, whatever. So if you do decide to explore moving that direction.
Mhm.
And like somebody to help cheerlead for that, please let me know.
Absolutely. Kelly, your question?
Jason, I just had a quick question. If you knew by chance, did they require those clubs and organizations to be incorporated with the state, or is it just kind of free for all, anybody can join? Do you need to be like a C37 or a C3?
There are incorporations, there are regular businesses that are part of it too, not just
Yeah,
incorporated ones. I know that would be a hurdle for XL Bears because I don't believe they've ever incorporated.
yeah. I believe the girls of leather are in the same boat. The last time I went to look for their incorporation, there wasn't one on file.
Yeah,
Correct.
and
XL Bears are not incorporated.
right. So I don't know if that's a requirement or not, but I do know, like looking through the list of partners, I can't say which ones are or aren't incorporated, but there are some non-voting partners, and I don't know if that would be a way to maybe get some of those organizations involved and maybe even let them rely on some of the mentorship of the other organizations that might be involved in terms of how do I file these things, how do I incorporate, how do I do a 990, it might file right into
Yeah,
clearly the mission of the WSLO, which is sort of to help communities.
Yes, because that is definitely something we've helped with in the past with other organizations as well to help get that started for them. Shay, I think, or Lita, whichever one, I don't know what's gonna call.
It's Jay.
Okay.
We were pretty heavily involved with Miss LA when Miss LA Leather was involved with ALC, and they are not incorporated in any way. It was a producer putting on a contest. So I think it depends on what we individually want to do as an organization, but unless it has changed in the last 3 years with LALC, it's not required that you have some sort of incorporation to earn the right to vote in the group if you attend the meetings.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So one of the other things is we do have Otter AI on our meetings as well, so that because it allows us to be part of the meeting and not worry about taking the notes, so we can look at the transcripts and go back and have the links and have the ideas, so we're not missing anything in translation. So I do want to make sure that that we'll have this information to act upon and to move forward with as well. So if there's any other suggestions or thoughts about how we move forward with that you would want to see yourself involved with?
I would maybe suggest why should people get involved? I think maybe that's
Right.
that's missing.
Right. Okay. And that makes perfect sense as well. Thank you. So I think the biggest thing is that we are hoping that we can help we've had a lot of representation with this contest at going on to the international level over the years. And there's been a lot of things that have happened that have kind of slowed the activity and the interaction within the community with WSLO and people's wanting to be involved in contests and people wanting to be involved with WSLO specifically as well. And that's why we're hoping that this turning this over to more of a community organization, because we don't have members to be, to fuel the work. We don't have a pool of volunteers to pull from that, aside from, the people that are always showing up. And so people aren't always feeling included. And so we really want to make sure that we are putting out there where people can have this space to feel like if we're going to send someone from Washington State to these bigger places, that we've had some input and some support and some bringing together of things as a whole. I think SLSC has done a great job of bringing together the community calendar and of making sure that people know what's going on. But we do want to have a space where people can have a say and have conversations that cross lines, that allow us to grow and build. And so that is a big part of why we hope people want to join, is that people are interested in the moving forward of this as an organization. And since being unhappy with how it's been, that you want to be part of that change. Jason, any Houston thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think one of the things that's important for me, especially after the pandemic, is to try and, bring people back together and to let us understand that even though obviously it's a very diverse community and, not everything is going to be for everyone, but we need to spend more time together. And I think we need to build those connections again, like Yolanda is saying. And that's something that's, really important to me long term.
I guess my question was more like, I think I've got a great handle on why WSLO wants the help, but I want to know, what do people get out of it for being involved?
Oh,
Like what's your sell to like, hey, we need you to be involved. Well, what's in it for me? Right. Why should yeah.
I guess what I would say is that ideally, we're finding people that have some passion for doing this work to begin with. So I think what it can be is a way to exercise those passions and to really accomplish something that to you is an important goal. And like Yolanda has said, to bring something to the community that you think is missing, because we do need diverse voices. And it's very easy for us to overlook perspectives that, we're not running into commonly or that we don't understand. And so I think that's looking for folks, I guess, like Yolanda said, that had some drive and maybe some vision to help us, move forward and to do the things that we want to do and to, to help our community grow.
I think another part of it is there's a lot of people that don't feel like they've been represented or don't feel like they have a place. And I know for me, and just speaking why I'm even here, right, is because it's important that there is a place for everybody, right? And there, to me, and in order to have that place, sometimes you have to make that place. And so it's really do you want to see this change? Do you want to be part of what this looks like? Do you want to be part of what this community looks like? Or, what do you get out of a better community? I think we all grow and we all get that ability to say, like, we are an actual other community and not subsets of pieces where no one wants to come together or be in same space. Raven, I saw your hand go up.
I think one of the things I would suggest would be really looking at the mission again, and how that includes everybody within the community. Because there are those of us here who are really super supportive of the gay and lesbian community who don't actually fall within those communities. So when you want to talk about inclusion, I think it's really important to make sure that you're looking at your mission statement and looking at that from the top down and everything that you want to do along those lines. And then also, like, when I was listening to the meeting the last meeting, whenever it was, there were things that I heard you saying that you wanted to do
Mhm.
that don't seem to be represented in the mission statement that you just read.
Mhm.
So I think one of the things that would really help in bringing people in is being really clear about what it is that is the mission of your organization.
Mhm.
Because that'll help people know what they're getting into and what they're contributing to.
Absolutely. Thank you. I definitely agree. I mean, it's hard to say, okay, we're rebuilding this thing and we have an idea of what we want it to look like. And we need to sell the idea of our future vision to people in order to make it happen, because we know we cannot make it happen alone. Right? We know we're going to miss things if we try and do it alone. So how do you convince people that, okay, see this future vision out here of this utopia of things, we're going to all get together and make this thing happen. And that's kind of where this rebuilding process is, that we don't have enough things outlined in what that's going to look like in order to, I don't think, to some people, in order to sell it. So, Thomas?
Yeah, can I get more clarification? I mean, I kind of find it a little bit rude. I'm trying not to talk to that today because of the actions you took at the last meeting, but whatever. I asked a question in chat. I think it deserves an answer of why the bylaws are not public and why you as an organization cannot be transparent in that manner to your community right now. You're asking for board members, but they can't even see your current composition of bylaws right now. And I think that's a disservice.
Okay. They are not currently public. They're not public at this time. They haven't been released at any point. We know there's a lot of work to be done to them, to redo them. And as we continue meetings with people that are interested in joining and looking at them, we're happy to share them. Lita and Jay.
Hi, sorry, it's Jay again. I don't know how to work this stupid phone. So I think something that's important for people to realize, like, we live in this instant gratification world, and we're dealing with hurt and harm and issues that go back 5 years, 10 years. And I think this is going to be a slow process. I think 2 weeks in between meetings isn't going to really, we're not going to solve all the problems, right? I would be surprised if this took less than a year or 2 years to really get in a place where WSLO is doing the things that they want and meeting the needs and wants of the community around it. And I think people that, if you're interested in that, you have to look at it from a long haul perspective, right? We're not going to fix what's happened in the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. We're still in a panini and dealing with that and those repercussions, and we're all volunteers and we all have full-time jobs, and I mean, most of us do. And I don't know about any of you, I'm not independently wealthy or able to retire. So I think that that's something you have to look at if you want to be involved. I do agree that the bylaws should be public. I also agree that the bylaws were written when I was in high school. So I think that some revamp needs to happen before that becomes the face of what we want to present to the world. I appreciate Yolanda saying that you'll make them available to whoever wants to see them. But from what I understand, it hasn't been the standard for them to be public. So that's kind of where we're at with it. But I know for me, as somebody who's been on a lot of boards, for over the last 15 years, you have to figure out what your own 10% is, right? For me to be on boards and education things and do stuff, because I don't like to wait in line. There's my 5% when I volunteer, but I just really want to keep it in perspective for people that these wounds are deep and they go back far, and it's going to take a long time of rebuilding to get to where I think hopefully all of us on this phone call want to be. And that's it.
Jay, that's very well said. And yeah, I think Yolanda and I would both be in agreement that if we were to publish bylaws, it would be good to sort of revise those more in line with what we discussed about as a mission before doing that, right?
Mhm. Definitely. And separating what, I think the other piece is separating what's bylaws and what's policies and procedures, and our operating procedures can be different than what our bylaws are, because they're more specific. I was reading through the bylaws and rewriting bylaws for another organization in September. Everything you do is not in your bylaws. So making sure that there's an understanding and a conversation about what bylaws are and what they mean is also has to be done when you're putting them out there, so that people understand them, because not everybody that looks at them goes, oh, but you didn't do it, like, and there is situations. So Dakota, did you still want your hand up?
Along with this transparency of bylaws, what about making them available now, but with the clear caveat, we intend to change these. So this is just what we have now. This gives you an idea of the work ahead, but this is not who we plan on being a year from now. But if an organization says, no, we're not going to even show you the bylaws, I'm kind of going, okay.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I suppose you're going to hide your books and everything else, and I'm not going to even get involved. You know, it's just.
Right. Understood. I think one of the interesting things about, talking about, like, there's so many things that need to be changed and things that we are looking at and working towards with the bylaws, is also, yes, they haven't been updated or anything, and the organization name hasn't even been changed on them from when that was changed 3 or 4 years ago. So there's a lot to be changed. Jason, you're muted, babe. Hold on.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's not, for me, having been on many boards, common for a lot of these organizations to publish their bylaws publicly. LASC does not, 15 Association in San Francisco does not, Avatar Los Angeles does not, Hellfire Club of Chicago does not. I think it's great when organizations do. I'm pretty sure CPI and SML both have their bylaws to be public, but I just wanted to set some expectations that, and certainly if you're a corporation that's not a 501, it's highly uncommon for you to publish your bylaws. I think that's, given the issues with, wanting to make sure everybody gets to see everything, I think it's a good step to the future. And sort of next step on that, we can all make a lot of demands about what WSLO needs to do and say that they need to do it right now. But I would much rather know that there is some sort of planning session where when this transformation happens, that there are steps, right? And that these things will get done when they're ready to get done, right? When all of the other things in the cascade are done, rather than all of us, cocking our shotguns and shooting all of our demands at WSLO all at once, because I don't think that that's going to be the best path forward.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree with the bylaw thing too. Throw them out there for the world to see and just, basically say, these are a work in progress. We understand that they're totally inadequate, but here they are in all their lackluster glory, right? At least you're transparent and you have a statement attached to them that these are currently under revision because of how outdated they are. The other thing I think is worthwhile is just looking at the mission statement again is, I think, really valuable. I mean, you have to look at the history of this organization. Really it was the Cuff Bar, its 2 owners and its employees having a bar promotion title that was for the community. It was for the community, but there was a certain selfish interest behind it. to own and operate a bar. And that was how titles worked. You know, they were put on by bars to generate business. And now that, you know, that bar and those owners and all the people associated with it are no longer, and, you know, WSLO is sort of free floating right now without any grounding about where it came from, right? Because all that's history and it's not coming back. So it's time to really dig deep and kind of think about what does this organization become and what drives us, right? And I like the idea that, you know, much like San Francisco and LA have sort of, you know, affinity groups that all report up, and, you know, someone maintains a calendar and everybody feeds their contestants to a regional contest, and we share information and publicize and support each other's events, you know, all great stuff. I think that would be ideal for where WSLO should be. But you know, it definitely is time to sit back and say, you know, now that we're not beholden to a bar and we don't have, you know, a nepotism of members from that ran that bar, you know, what does this organization need to look like, right? So I think time spent over the next year exploring that is well spent.
Absolutely. And that's what we're hoping that these conversations lead to, is really looking at what does it mean? What is the community want it to mean? I know there was a point where it felt like the community wasn't really sure if they want a WSLO around, right? And so like we have to really look at that. Is the contest going to continue? Is this things that we want to continue to do or not?
Yeah,
right?
I think the key thing that put a bee in the bonnet is where WSLO stepped out and tried to be a police in force, you know, part of the community, which got itself into a little bit of trouble, right? It's not your mission statement. You should be focusing on harmony and having a title and raising money and education and doing the things. But you know, WSLO's role isn't a policing, you know, aspect of calling people out or doing things like that. And I think that's where, you know, that rift has occurred. And I think it can be relatively easy healed if we steer out of that and make it very clear this isn't WSLO, right?
Understood. Yeah. Jim?
Echoing something that Kelly said there about the origins of WSLO, the dates for the contest and Leather Pride Week are also tied to that historical cuff anniversary. So those may no longer, there need not be a restriction on keeping the existing dates if changing things improves stuff.
All things that can be changed and altered as we go forward as it fits for us. Let's see, Pickett.
Hey, I just want to say that like what we do is political. I know that some people don't want to make it that way. Being queer is political, kink is political, and to say that like our organizations are not allowed to have a conversation about folks who are acting inappropriately, I think is not a part of an org that I want to be around. Like, I think that we have to be able to do that from time to time. I understand the need to get rid of cancel culture. Like that is, I'm on board with all of that. And also like, I don't think putting a muzzle on a board about inappropriate actions in a community is something that we should strive for. I'm quite proud of WSLO and what they've done, and Yolanda and what you are trying to do right now in trying to heal this community. I think you are truly amazing. And I want to see us find a way to come together. But I don't want to do that. And we can't come together if we let bad folks keep acting bad. You know, that stuff didn't happen in a bubble. So I wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. It's so interesting. Like I was reading through the chat, right? It says if WSLO moves to a member at large system, there will be some policing involved. This is a filter up situation where WSLO would become the figurehead of the community. Is a thought. Like that would be potentially a consequence or a great side note. Their response, you know, obviously we would not want to be responsible for anything from a membership perspective, but I think it would give us a place to come together and develop what that community standard is from organizations that do have members, that they would then in turn with their members and not from a WSLO standpoint. Jason?
So speaking to that point, I think what Nikki put in the chat is similar to what I was going to say, which is that if everybody's in the room, if those orgs have representation and are voting on the board, the conversation about how all of that stuff would have been handled would have been very different, right? I think it would have been a lot more strategic. I think a lot more voices would have been involved. But even more so than that, like, I feel like this conversation is starting to get a little bit too backward looking and not forward enough looking, which is that moving forward, can WSLO add to its many list of priorities, having its own code of conduct or community code of conduct that all of the member organizations, you know, if they decide to send representation, or whatever the board looks like, that everybody can sign onto and agree to, right? For at least WSLO events. I think that would be a way to put all of those, what Pickett mentioned and what some of the other people are mentioning was done poorly. And if there's a framework around it and everybody's at the table, those conversations will be hopefully a lot more civil, strategic, thought out, and you know, showing proper restraint, right?
Absolutely.
As restraint is needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Farrell?
I was right there with Jason. I totally agree. If everybody comes together with representation in WSLO, then the idea of a majority saying we're not okay with this is not WSLO policing. It's the community coming together as a majority. And so that's what a community committee that WSLO would bring together would work as. And they could be organizations, if WSLO has a standard, rewrites its bylaws, rewrites its missions, and has a standard for organizations or events sanctioned by WSLO, and somebody goes, okay, we're doing this event and we know it's outside of WSLO standard, that's your personal event. Just understand that it doesn't fall within what has been established by community to be agreed upon, because everybody will not always agree on anything. And I don't think it's unfair to say organizations may have some events that not everybody want to go to and won't fall into the community agreement. That's personal things. That's like saying I'm gonna throw a private party and I'm not inviting everybody. But having a community standard that people can be held to by a community that everyone gets a vote on seems the safest way to make sure, or the best way to make sure everyone feels safe.
And a big part of that is we need members to do it, right? We need people that want to start the work and want to get on this beginning train to get there. I have tons of capacity, not really. So, there is time constraints to things, and Jason and I and Ben and Lamanani are here and we're starting this and we're moving forward, but there is limits to what we can in capacity do, and ideas and ways and outreach and all those pieces that we need more people for. So that is where we are today. And that's where we want to see the vision of what we could be and have people that are on board with that. on board with helping us get there. There's, I just, sorry, back to one of Raven's thoughts of like what that looks like in a greater community. We went to an event and realized how much we say we're the Washington State Leather Organization. And as Washington State, that encompasses so many intersections. And there are so many people that we are not reaching in communities of leather and kink that we are not, that don't even think of us at all, because we have had limitations of the organization in the past that have been very specific and specifically targeted. And that was because of who started it and where it was started and what it was designed for. But that doesn't mean that's how we have to continue. Right. So, Dakota?
Is there anywhere in the country a leather organization that is a good model to look at, that everyone can kind of go, geez, look at the way they do it over here. They're not backstabbing each other. They're doing this. Everyone knows who they are, etc. I mean, is there anyone we look at and can say that's a really good model? It'd be nice if we could get rid of some of this that we currently do, and maybe some more of this. Like Jason's saying, here's a different way to do your board members than what's been doing, because it sounds like what's been done ain't working. Okay. And what I bring to this conversation is, I wasn't around for any of the drama, so none of you have got any issues with me yet. I don't have it with you. I'm happy to help.
Perfect.
But we got to know what are we working to building?
Right. I think, Jason put out the link to their partners page, and I think that's a great start. There's a good point, but I think every community, unfortunately, has their own things and their own issues. So I think there's definitely pieces that we can pick from different places to do different things. When things started kind of going through things, we reached out to NCSF about what can we do to help prevent some of this in the future. And so there's some things that they recommended as well. So like incorporating all of those things together and all the ideas from different organizations and policies that other people have found successful are really helpful for other people to bring their ideas to the table. So we want the ideas, we want the intersection, we want the people to be represented. And so does anyone else have any additional questions, thoughts, or anything you want to add to this conversation for us to go back and think about as we have people that are reaching out to move forward? Jordan?
Hi, I'm Jordan. For those of you who don't know me, first of all, my video isn't working, so please enjoy this Naruto Hello Kitty combo that is probably showing up while I'm talking. But I'm mostly involved with Onyx Northwest, and I haven't been involved with WSLO much at all. Just picking up on context clues from this conversation, it sounds like there needs to be two distinct conversations that come out of here. One is just sort of like a reconciliation conversation, because there are still people who have like hurt feelings and also feel like there's been a lot of harm done to them or to their organizations personally. And I do think that rather than just trying to move forward, addressing the harm that has been done would go a long way to showing people and showing different organizations who are probably going to be part of WSLO in the future that folks from this organization are willing to listen and play ball in that way, because that keeps sidetracking the other part of the conversation that I think needs to happen, which is a collective community visioning conversation where people are invited to not just think about how WSLO comes together, but more so think about how are our communities, when being called upon to represent themselves at a national level, how are we representing ourselves, and how is that equitable? How is that fair? And I don't know if those conversations have already happened or if they're already starting to happen. But I don't necessarily think that if it comes out that like WSLO is not the proper organization due to the history and due to the harm that's been perpetuated, to hold the conversation around how do we represent ourselves at the national level, from a statewide level, that can be the result of many different conversations. But I do think there needs to be a visioning conversation for folks of, well, hey, how does like the folks who were part of WSLO and did need to come together, how do we continue that work going forward? And that's a visioning conversation. That's not a reconciliation one. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts, Kelly?
I'll just go back to Dakota's question about role model organizations. I would pull up 3 from perspective of community-based, both San Francisco and LA, having that structure of, we maintain a calendar. These are all our voting subgroup members and representing all the diversity of leather and kink inside of our community. I think both of those cities have done a really good job at organizing around that. And then finally, the third one I would point out is Chicago. I really liked the direction of how they took their last year's titles. And they became, instead of having a whole bunch of gendered titles and other stuff, they reduced them to ambassadors. This is our ambassador of leather. If you're female, trans, cis, black, white, you run for the title as an ambassador. There's no bifurcation of all these different genders and ethnicities and stuff like that. You're an ambassador of the community, so run for one. So I really liked their approach at sort of like getting rid of all that otherness, and just reducing it to an ambassador. So I thought that was a really good direction to take the titles for them.
Jason.
Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, and I hope I'm not stepping on people who would like to talk or talking over them. But adding on what has already been said, I think a lot of the ideation from this call has been coming up with ideas for how WSLO can do things differently, like in terms of what. But I would love the follow-up from this conversation to be the board going back and saying, we've got all of these recommendations, but what's the framework for how we're moving forward, right? I would like to know that there's like a schedule, that there are, we've identified these 5 things that need to change, bylaws, community healing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What needs to happen first, according to the board, what can happen later, and then publishing that in some way, and letting the community know and set expectations with all of these orgs and everybody who come to these meetings to say, this is how we're going to move forward, so that when you do get these recommendations, they fill into those slots, right? And that you're like, okay, yes, that's a great idea. And so, that's step 3. Step 3 is we're going to be doing it in 3rd quarter, et cetera, so that you're not feeling like you have to do all of this all at once. And so that we all have faith that you've got a plan, right? I would love to know that the outcome of this call is that there's a big structure in place with a plan.
Absolutely. And that is definitely our next steps, is taking in what all of this information, all of the ideas, all of the things, and there are people that are going to say, yeah, I want to support, I want to be part of this development, and then there are people who are going to wait and see what happens, and we are completely open to either way, but we definitely have plans to meet and assess all of the things that we've met over the last month of where we need to go next. What is what is our plan? What are our action steps to move forward for sure? And we definitely want to make sure that we are hearing you first before we just, we don't want to go into that bubble either and say, okay, this is how we are going to move forward and not have any input from those that we are impacting or that have concerns even on how we move forward. So does anyone else have anything else they want to add and share to the conversation in terms of, how what they need to make a decision to whether or not they're ready to be involved or not at this point? And Peter, do you have a question?
Not necessarily a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to put out some intent of me somehow being involved. I think there's community out here that in various parts of Washington that would love to have more of a stakeholder in some of those, not necessarily decisions, but practices, and to feed some life into an organization that is asking for life. And I just haven't figured out, for example, myself, how best I can show up for you guys, or you folks, in the sense that I am so far away. And, for the last 6 months, I've been trying to make it to a WSLO meeting at CC's, and I just can't get myself to get there, right? And it's not because it's not a priority for me. It's because literally it feels like another part of the earth, another world to travel to from Tacoma. So I think brainstorming some volunteer opportunities or volunteer roles that can, it's great having stakeholders or organizations part of the community, but even just regular volunteer positions that can be filled or what have you. So there's a little bit of choice for us where we can devote some hours, but definitely, try to make some more diversity in the program. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Definitely the volunteer roles and outlining what that looks like is definitely a big part, I think, of making sure that we're doing these meetings. I mean, we could do these meetings in person, but part of wanting to do them virtually is because we want to make sure that everyone that wants to have the chance to participate can. And not have transportation or location be a part of it. It is, there's no way that we can get people from Eastern Washington to come over for a meeting on a regular basis and maybe, taking our meeting that way as well. So one of the things that we've talked about is how do we outreach and actually show up elsewhere outside of the Seattle area. So having people in contacts in those areas is a big part of that also. So is there anything else anyone else would like to add before we go to like what our next steps are? No? Cool. So our next steps as the existing board are to take through, we have the transcript from the last meetings and we have some action steps to go through. And one of those, along with both meetings is looking at what are our next steps? What do we need to call to the table? And how are we going to look at, the visioning and all the things that have been mentioned, and put a calendar and put steps into place, so that we can invite people that are interested back into this space to have those very specific conversations in how we move forward. So we appreciate your time, your energies, giving us this space, and know that we are, if nothing else, we're listening and we have intention behind this space to do and to change where things have been for the better for us all. Jason, anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. If you do, please reach out, send us an email. If you want to have a conversation, if you need more information, if anything else comes up that you're like, ooh, I forgot this piece, please make sure that you reach out to us so that we can do that, and look forward to our next meeting. We will have one in September to go through, you know, whatever our next steps are. We will be looking at all the suggestions today, and so you expect to see things from us in terms of all the things that you've requested from us thus far. Okay. I appreciate all of you for showing up and giving us your energy and your time. And we are here for the challenge.
Yes.
and want things to be better. So thank you all. And
Thank you, everyone.
nothing else. Please have a wonderful evening. Be safe wherever you are. And
Very good. Thanks.
are you?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Right.